as we look at the takeaways from the scrimmage, Nick, one is that this quarterback battle is not over. As a matter of fact, I think it's far from over based
Heating
on
up.
the way that Billy commented about it. There was a lot of questions that he got asked about Graham Mertz and Jack Miller and the competition that they've been having. And it seems like based on the way things played out in the scrimmage and where this race stands, this is going to continue into the summer, into fall camp, I would think. And, I don't know right now who I can say is going to win the job.
You know what? It kind of reminded me of everyone when Billy first got here. All they're seeing is what you're doing in the program, and what I mean by that is with Mark Hockey and
program.
How are you? Yeah, shout out to JD. What are you doing in the program? How are you attacking your lifting and your training and all this stuff? And Lorenzo Lingard was a guy that the coaches could not say his name enough. In the spring and pre-spring, and then he got enough carries that he decided to leave. And I think what Graham Mertz did when he first got here was what he needed to do. Show up early, stay late, maybe bring an air mattress into the film room because you have so much to learn. And I just think that now that we're seeing him, I think Florida wanted Graham Mertz to start. You have a guy who started 32 games at a major conference. They wanted him to come out and win the job. And
I think when you make that investment and to bring that guy in the quarterback room, you need him to.
They wanted him to. We talked about, hey, they sat him next to Mitchell and Iguakin.
That's right.
Yeah, they sat him next to them, and I think they wanted Graham Mertz to start. He just hasn't separated, and that's not on the coaching staff. That's just on Graham. You haven't won the job yet. And I mean, Billy was point blank period asked, is there separation? He says he doesn't think so. Obviously not going to, he said, and then he says not going to talk about that publicly either. But then do you want to come out of spring with one? Not necessarily, because I don't think we're going to. Florida's not going to have a starting quarterback named this time next week. This quarterback battle, credit to Jack Miller. He's not he's not sitting down, rolling over, and playing dead. Jack Miller doesn't want to sit either. And this is a quarterback battle that I think that we'll probably be writing about up until the first person takes a snap against Utah.
I agree. And to be fair, after the spring game last year, Anthony Richardson was never named the starter, but that was just because he didn't need to be said.
What's understood doesn't need to be said.
It doesn't need to be explained at all. I think that
Billy wouldn't even have answered that, Zach. You'd been like, "Hey, is Anthony the starting quarterback?" He's like, "Did you miss the game? Did you miss the spring game?"
Yeah. That's when all the top 10 projections started coming out. So, I think though that if a guy next Thursday has a Anthony like Richardson performance, and maybe there's even that much of a discrepancy between one guy's playing the others, I don't think that will win them the job, right? Like if Miller just outperforms Mertz in the spring game or vice versa, I don't think that alone will then have them come out of camp and say, "Yep, he won it with the way that he played in the spring game." Like it's the totality of it, and based on the totality so far, not one guy has done enough to then just get that nod with the spring game on top of it. And you mentioned, Graham hasn't been able to kind of get a stranglehold on this job and just take it. And I think that's some of that is certainly on him being a new guy, maybe, not progressing to the point that he would want or the coaches were want. But some of that also has to do with Jack now. I think that we got to give some credit to Jack Miller. Billy said that this guy's made drastic improvement from where he was, last year. And certainly, from Billy's standpoint, he didn't get to see him play basically the entire regular season. He was out. So this spring is really the first time that he's got to see him healthy again, for an extended period of time, just kind of going through practice. And, he's been impressed, as I said earlier in the show, with how he responded to this competition. Look, I mean, this dude for the last 2 years sat behind C.J. Stroud
Mhm.
and Anthony Richardson. That's tough sledding right there.
Hey, should have transferred somewhere else, man.
I
You were
mean,
trying to
my
get away from
God.
Stroud, and you found someone who's going to go right after him in the draft.
Right, or before him. I mean, but those
before.
could be the
Either way,
those could be the first two guys off the board, and those are the two guys that you played behind. So, I don't, it says something. I don't think that you can maybe look down on Jack as a for the fact that he's been a backup because of that. But having said that, he still went through it for 2 years, and then he finally, both of these guys are kind of out of the picture for him, and it's his time. And then they add Graham Mertz, and they add a guy that's got so much starting experience over him, and now he's once again kind of got his work cut out for him. And credit to Max, he didn't pout. He didn't go hit the portal again. He attacked the offseason, I think, with the right way. And I think when we met with him, Nick, I felt like just his demeanor and his confidence was in a much better place than it was when we met with him the first time last spring.
He was shell shocked the first.
Yeah, he was. He's not shell shocked in this competition with Graham Mertz. No way.
No. So some of what's being lost is and I get the cycle from the fan base. Initially, I think people were mad about Mertz, and then Andy Jean said he's the best quarterback I ever played with, and then there was like this crazy hype behind him. And I get why, if he hasn't taken the job, why people are mad or down or disappointed, because what you've seen from Jack Miller isn't great. But Jack Miller didn't have full feeling in his right throwing thumb in a game that clearly Florida's players didn't care to be playing. So you're throwing Jack Miller out for a game where the entire team played poorly.
Throwing him to the wolves, as Billy said.
And I think what we're losing here is that this isn't Graham Mertz not being great. I think we're losing that Jack Miller might be playing well, that Jack Miller might be pushing Graham Mertz, and that what the one game you saw from Miller wasn't a representation of the player that he is. I think that was a bad game for him. I don't know that Jack Miller is going to be, your first team all SEC quarterback next year, but I don't think he's what you saw in the Las Vegas Bowl. So while we say that Graham Mertz hasn't won it, I think we need to give Jack Miller credit for Graham Mertz not having won it, because he's been pushing. And as you said, and as Billy said, he's been getting better.
And just to reiterate Napier's comments after the scrimmage on Thursday, basically asked about naming a starter and if anybody's distanced themselves. He said, I don't know, or I don't necessarily know that we're ready to define that in public. And then he was also asked about if he would like to have a starting quarterback defined at some point in the offseason so that the team can rally around somebody. And he just totally dismissed that, said that, hey, they're rallying around both guys. Both of them have been effective for this offense. But here was where I really, if you're reading into his comments, it shows you, like you said, Nick, that this thing could go all the way into the first snap in Salt Lake City. Billy said, we've got a long ways to go before we play and a lot of reps. Training camp is essentially 2 spring practices. We're going to have 18 OTAs this summer, a lot of throwing, a lot of catching, a lot of meetings, a lot of competition left here. So, if he's talking about 18 OTAs, there's still, I think, a lot that he's looking to evaluate between these two.
Yeah, I don't know that he should be talking about OTAs, but that's a story for a different day and for a toothless NCAA. I think you're going to get a quarterback battle, like I said, deep into the summer and creeping into the fall. I think the leaves are going to start changing up north, and Florida might still be looking for a quarterback. And we'll get into a little bit more of the quarterback situation, I think, a little bit later. But a position where also, if a dude shows up in the portal that sends you that, hey, you up text, you're responding to that.